And we begin with the historic news that MPs in the United Kingdom have voted to approve the assisted dying bill. And that means that terminally ill adults expected to die within 6 months could seek medical assistance to end their lives. And let's remind ourselves now of this momentous moment that this took place a short while ago in Parliament.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. And look!
Well, there was shock and despair for some, but this was the moment the campaigners celebrated that result.
We won!
We can now speak with GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster, who is there for us in Westminster Hall. Catherine Forster, you've been covering this story throughout. You and I have debated the moral complexities of this, the implications of this, the lessons we've learned from abroad. Today, it was voted through. Tell us the mood on the ground there at this historic moment.
Yes, well, we have just witnessed history. There's lots of votes in Parliament, of course there are, but this is going to be the biggest change to society in England and Wales for decades, potentially, since the Abortion Act, because what this means is, yes, it will go to the House of Lords, but it has to be implemented by the NHS by 2029. The founding principles of the NHS will have to be rewritten. Concerns, of course, about the state of palliative care, the pressure on the NHS, but many, many people absolutely delighted, thinking this is a long overdue change which will save people that are dying suffering. I'm joined now by Jake Richards. He is the Labour MP for Rother Valley. He sat on the Bill Committee and is absolutely an expert on this. Jake, thank you for talking to us today. You must be feeling very relieved. Tell us why you feel it is so important this change is made.
Well, yes, I'm really pleased. This is a profound moment, and for thousands of people, including many of my constituents who have campaigned and fought for this change in the law for many, many years. Saying that, this is not a celebration. We're very aware there are other people, including constituents of mine, who are really worried about this change, who are against this, and we need to bring the country together now. And as this bill goes to the House of Lords, where there'll be further amendments and hopefully further strengthening of those safeguards, I hope people can be reassured that this bill is really rigorous. The government will have 4 years, 4 long years, to implement it to make sure it's safe. But yes, on a personal level, obviously to be involved in a small way in really profound social change is a really important moment for me.
And obviously, huge relief, but it will take time. Are you confident, given the resources, given the state of the NHS and palliative care, given the opposition from quite a lot of doctors to this, that you will be able to implement it and do it well and properly in that time frame?
I'm really confident that this can be done within the 4-year time period within the legislation. I think that's a pretty reasonable time frame for it. But look, I'll be keeping an eye on it. My job as an MP is not just to sign this bill and then go home. I will be keeping an eye on what the government is doing over the next 4-year period and making sure that they're held to account as they should be. This is really serious stuff, and there are some doctors who are for it, there are some doctors who are against it. I'm really pleased that we're going to be making real progress over the next few years at implementing it. And at the same time, I'm really pleased the government have committed again to look at palliative care, because it's not either or. We need to improve both. We need to improve palliative care and offer assisted dying, in my view, and I hope that will be done over the coming months and years.
One of your fellow Labour MPs, Vicky Foxcroft, just resigned the whip over the disability cuts. She spoke in Parliament earlier saying that she was astonished at the lack of voices in this debate about people from disabilities. Many of them feel incredibly worried and that they've been closed out. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, I understand there are lots of people from disabled communities who are really, really worried about this. I don't accept the criticism that Vicky made. I personally met with disabled people in my constituency, disabled groups as well, gave evidence to the Bill Committee. My neighbouring MP and colleague, Marie Tidball in Penistone Stockbridge, went above and beyond to make sure that disabled voices were heard as part of this process and in the assisted dying process. And we've had actually real big changes since second reading in the bill in that regard. But that conversation continues. This is not the end of the road in any way, and I'll continue to be talking to disabled constituents and others about this. But it's worth saying that there are a lot of disabled people in this country who do support this change as well, who don't want to be left out, and who would like to have the option of an assisted death in certain circumstances. We need to make sure that's done safely, but I don't think it's a homogenous group or there's one view on this.
Jake Richards, thank you very much for talking to us on GB News. Thank you. So an enormous day in Parliament. I was struck by something that Conservative MP Ben Spencer said a little bit earlier in the Commons. He said, we are bound to let some people down. If it had not passed, terminally ill people would feel abandoned. We know there's horrible stories of people having taken their own lives. I was talking to a gentleman whose wife had effectively suffocated despite palliative care, but now as things stand it's going to go ahead, but there'll be many like Diane Abbott and others very concerned for what this might mean for the very most vulnerable people in society.
Thank you, Catherine. I know you've done a huge amount of work on this. You've been to Canada, looking at the lessons we can learn from there, and your work's been excellent on this. I can sense the emotion in your voice. Thank you for joining us today from Westminster, Catherine Forster. Let's get back to the studio now and have a debate on this, the pros and the cons of this truly momentous time in British political history. I'm joined in the studio by the former chair of Dignity in Dying, Dr Jonathan Romain, and also the Global Campaigns Manager at Citizen Go, Caroline Farrow. Welcome to you both. If I could start with you, Dr Romain, would you mind setting out the timeline now? A lot of people, I think, believe this is law now. It's not. What happens next?
No, you're quite right. It was an important vote, but it won't happen tomorrow because it's first of all got to go to the Lords. There'll be further amendments. It could ping-pong back to the Commons, but it is likely to pass the Lords because they tend to follow the will of the Commons. And then it still won't be law. We expect they'll pass it in November. But then there's going to be an implementation period, because this is a very serious business, and we've got to get it right in terms of the protocols, the training for GPs. So they're allowing between 2 and 4 years. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it is hopefully in the pipeline. And I say hopefully because this isn't about winning or losing. This is about helping people who are terminally ill and mentally competent and who are suffering and who have had a great life, but they feel that they are suffering unbearably, and now is the time for them to let go. Now, of course, if people want to carry on to their last breath, as I'm sure most people will, that's great, and they should have every support, palliative care. But for those people who are suffering, and we know there are so many stories, in fact, my tipping point, because I was initially, I don't know if you know this, I was initially a bit wary about this, and then I kept on, as a Minister of Religion, visiting people in hospital. They had brilliant care, but they were still dying in pain. And my tipping point was when I went to see our chap, I'll call him Colin, and he was not just in his bed, he was on his bed, on his knees, with his head in between his knees. And I said, why are you in this position? And he said, that's the only way I can control the pain. And I thought there has to be a different way. There has to be a better way. So this is really about giving people options. People who want to carry on, great, they should be having every support. But people who want to let go and say, thank you, God, it's been a great life, but I really don't want to suffer. And these are people, of course, who are terminally ill, so they are dying anyway, and they don't want to carry on in excruciating pain or whatever. Okay. We should give them that option.
Caroline Farrow, you no doubt have a very different take on this. I can see you're very emotional. When I spoke to you beforehand, devastating news for you. Tell us what you believe this spells for Britain.
I think it's not a vote for dignity. I think it's a vote for despair. And I think, once again, laws are being made by the strong that's going to disproportionately affect the weak. Sorry, I don't normally get upset, but yeah, I think this is so shocking. One of the things that struck me as Jonathan was talking was you were talking about doctors needing to be trained. So that trained to what, basically? Thank you. Trained to kill people. And I think this is one of the issues with this bill, is that we can't just say this is a private decision. We live in a country where we have a socialised healthcare, and a private decision is going to affect every single individual. And I think it's those individuals, it's those individuals who are privileged that will have the choice. Individuals who are feeling... One of the amendments that was rejected this morning was to deny... There was an amendment that said if somebody's being pressured or coerced, they won't be... or feels that they're being a burden. If someone feels they're being a burden or is mentally ill, they won't be allowed an assisted death. And that amendment got voted down. So it is people who feel like they are being a burden, who... we know that choice is very rarely made in a vacuum. Choice is very rarely made objectively. And I think this just changes the nature of doctors. It changes the role of the NHS. It has provided a foundation for the charter of the NHS to be changed at will by any future government. It's a Trojan horse. So the NHS that was set up to protect and conserve our health can now kill us. And then that's before we go into the logistics of... We don't know what drugs are going to be used. We don't know what method. There's some terrible stories of people being given the drugs to die and taking 72 hours. I think there was one case of a man who it didn't work and then he died two weeks later. We've all got stories. My father was given a terminal diagnosis in 1990. He's still, thank God, here today. I have a very good, close personal family friend whose sister chose an assisted death in Canada, and she said there was absolutely nothing dignified about this. So I have to admit, yeah, my heart's breaking. This doesn't just affect a few individuals. This affects everybody, and I think it's... I think the reaction of the disabled campaigners outside of Parliament today, it's like a dark cloud descended.
Can I come in and correct you gently? Because firstly, doctors won't be killing patients. The really key thing about this is that it's assisted only in that you can get a prescription. But you have to be compos mentis, you have to be mentally competent. Only you yourself can take the medication. And that's really crucial because we want people with agency to do it. So it's not doctors killing people, it's doctors giving people the prescription if they so wish to take it. And as for coercion, well, actually, doctors are already trained to spot coercion. This will be additional training on top of it. And the big thing, well, you mentioned disabled people, but of course, if you're disabled, you don't qualify. You have to be terminally ill. So whether you're able or disabled is irrelevant. You have to be terminally ill. And remember also, we're not going into a leap into the dark, which sort of Caroline seems to imply.
But there have been a lot of people saying people with anorexia could qualify. The financial strain on the NHS could be enormous. Is the sign-off inadequate? Are there enough psychiatrists to take care of the caseload? We don't know how many people may come forward or what the costs may be. There could be oversight issues.
But we do. That's the whole point. This isn't like the first thing in the world. We're doing exactly what's happened in Oregon, which is they've had it since 1997. Very, very similar. And that's, what, over 27 years? That's 27 years ago. So we've got 27 years' worth of medical records, statistics, research, regulation, monitoring. This is no leap into the dark. We are actually following a well-trodden path. And of course, what's really great about Oregon is not only do we have the records, but also we know from Oregon that palliative care people who were initially against, I have to say, are now working hand in hand with the assisted dying process, and they get benefits as well. I mean, what happened in October? Okay. Remember, Wes Streeting gave £100 million to the palliative care hospices so that palliative care should be just as much supported as assisted dying.
OK, Caroline Farrow, final word to you. I know you also shared huge concerns about the recent, well, very recent passing of the abortion bill too. Is there something in your eye, you think, going on about the sanctity of life with this government and something that sends out grave worries for you?
I think so. I mean, I heard the MP, Luke Jones, I think, talk about... He referred to the bill that was passed, the amendment to the Police and Criminal Justice Bill on Tuesday, and he said, we've already talked about choice this week. And that choice was the choice of a mother of a full-term healthy baby to be able to procure her own abortion with no sanctions. And he said passing this would bookend the week nicely, which was incredibly callous. I think the problem is that the Parliament doesn't... Our parliamentarians don't understand the dignity, sanctity and value of life. We're being seen as a commodity, and it has very much felt like a week of death. And the other thing is, this change I know one campaign group, the Together campaign, were calling for a referendum. This change was not on any single party's manifesto.
Not true, not true. It was on Conservative and Liberal Democrats said that they were in favour. Right?
Nobody actively campaigned on this issue. And
well, you're just going back on yourself. You just told something that wasn't quite true. So
I would like to see where it was openly published on the Tory manifesto. I mean, frankly, I think any Conservative who voted for this bill should be stripped of office. They're not a Conservative. What are they conserving?
It was conscience. It was a matter of conscience, which is why it was a private member's bill, which is the best thing to be.
But it's not. You know, it's not. This is a matter. Death affects everybody. It's a matter of human. It's a matter of human experience.
This is about helping people.
This is not individual conscience. This is about, do we, in a socialised healthcare system, do we coerce? And believe me, I know, I've had 5 children. With about 3 or 4 of my children, I've been offered an abortion every single time. You know, doctors will be able to raise this with their with their patient, sorry. Doctors will be able to say, I'm really sorry you've had a devastating diagnosis. Do you want to choose an assisted death? That is going to be seen as soft pressure.
OK, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Thank you very much. 2 very different opinions, but both hugely passionate. Thank you. And that is Dr Jonathan Romain and Caroline Farrow. Thank you.